So the footballers who are always consistent in the things that will make them a better player are always the ones who don't just see themselves as guys who play football. They literally see themselves as footballers. They see themselves as almost professionals already, you understand? So this leads to them staying disciplined even when they don't feel like training, even when they feel like, eating bad food that is not good for them. Even when they don't feel like going to the gym, they still do it because in their minds they see themselves as actual footballers. They see themselves as pros. And obviously, because they see themselves as pros, it leads to them doing the actions of the pros. All the preparation, all the training, all the hard work that makes them the best player that they can. And because they're doing those actions as well, those actions also equate to them seeing themselves as footballers even more, you understand? So it's a two-way streak. If you do the actions, you're going to see yourself as a professional footballer, and if you see yourself as a professional footballer, you're going to eventually do the actions, of course. Now this thing here is called self-image, and today I'll be talking about why it's so important for you to build the self-image of actually being a footballer. You need to see yourself as a pro right now. Even if you're not getting paid, even if you're 10 years old, 13 years old, 15 years old, doesn't really matter, you understand? In order for you to make it, you need to start seeing yourself as a pro. So I'll be talking about the importance of you building that self-image of being an actual professional footballer. Now, this thing called self-image, what actually is self-image? Self-image is literally just the way you see yourself. Like, if somebody asks you the question, who are you? The things that you say to them, the first things that pop into your mind, that's pretty much your self-image. Now, your self-image can be given to you by other people, but it can also be given to you by yourself, you understand? Let's take alcohol, for example. If you're at a party, yeah, let's say you're at a party, and somebody asks you, yo, bro, do you want to drink? And if you tell them, nah, bro, I'm trying to quit drinking, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to quit drinking. That person who says I'm trying to quit drinking is way more likely to actually give in to the temptation of drinking, and by the end of the night he's probably the guy who's the most drunk. However, if you're at a party and you're the guy who says, nah bro, I don't drink at all, I don't drink at all, that person there who says he doesn't drink at all, he's not going to give into the temptation, you understand? Simply because that's his self-image. He doesn't see himself as a drinker, he sees himself as a non-drinker, you understand? But whereas the guy who said I'm trying to quit drinking, he still sees himself as a drinker. However, he just sees himself as a drinker who's trying to quit. So he hasn't actually taken on that self-image of a non-drinker. So which leads to him giving into that temptation. It's the same thing as being a professional footballer. If you see yourself as a guy who's trying to make it, as a guy who's trying to make it, oh, I'm just a guy who plays football. When the going gets tough, when it's cold outside, you know what I'm saying, -degrees or very low degrees, and it's cold outside, you don't want to go train. On those mornings you wake up and you're like, oh, I really don't want to do this. In your head, what's going to go through your mind? You're going to be like, oh, I don't need to go train today, you understand? Like, I don't get paid for this shit. These are the things that are going to go through your mind. You're going to be like, oh, I don't get paid for this shit anyway. You know, it's easy for the pros. They get paid all this money, but me, I don't even get paid for this, man. I'm staying in bed today. Whereas, let's take person two. Person two, if he sees himself as a pro, he's just going to get up and he's going to be like, yo, I need to do what I need to do, you understand? I'm a footballer at the end of the day. I need to go out there, I need to train, work on my game, whatever aspect of my game that is, whether it be technical, physical or mental. I need to go out there, work on my game. Whether it's recovery, you come back home from training, you need to stretch. Person one, because he sees himself as a guy who's trying to make it, or as a guy who just plays football, kind of takes it seriously, or even takes it seriously, but he doesn't see himself as like a proper pro. He's going to be like, oh, I don't need to stretch, I don't need to take care of my body, understand? I'll just go to bed, like it doesn't really matter. Yeah, again, I don't get paid for this. However, the guy who's a pro, person two, he's gonna look at it and be like, yo, I need to do this, you understand? At the end of the day, I'm a footballer, this is what I need to do to recover, so I'm fresh, so I'm ready for the next day, you understand? So you see how self-image is very, very key, you understand? Like I said before, self-image can be given to you by other people or by yourself. When it's given to you by other people, I feel like it makes it that much easier. Like, when people know you in your sort of area, in your school, in your team as the footballer, I think, in my opinion, it's much easier to, you know, stay disciplined with those tasks, because I've been in situations where it's like, people ask me, oh, yo, bro, do you want to drink, do you want to smoke? And then a person next to me will be like, nah, bro, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't do any of those things, he's a footballer. So obviously my self-image is like, yo, I'm a footballer inside, I just don't really do them things. So I'm way less likely to actually fall into those temptations, you understand? Especially it's easier because people actually know me as that as well. If people know you as that, I feel like it's a lot easier to, you know, stay on course, stay on track, because obviously in that situation, the person's actually, you know, declined the offer for me as well. You know, you have people to sort of help you on the narrow path. This is why you see, you know, academy players, when they get to like 10 years old, 12 years old, it's so important for them to have, you know, people, good people around them, you know, preferably good parents around who actually care about their football career, because they can sort of steer the ship. They can sort of just keep implementing that self-image into their kids' head of like, yo, you're a footballer, you do these sets of things, and you don't do these sets of things. And all this kid's life, that's his self-image. He's like, yo, I'm a professional footballer, I'm a professional footballer, which leads to him sort of not falling into the bad vices, you understand? Especially if he has good people around him, he just sort of will never fall off and have those bad vices. That now, does it mean that he'll never make a mistake, that he'll never, you know, try a few things? No, obviously he can mess up. Obviously, I'm not expecting players to be perfect all the time. Even the professionals are not perfect all the time. However, he's going to be pretty much perfect at least 90% of the time, 95% of the time, enough to the point where he will never fall off, enough to the point where he won't get caught in those temptations that are actually going to derail his career, see his talent going down, and then eventually get released from a football academy. So you understand about self-image, how it's so key. How you see yourself literally just dictates everything, not just in football but in life. It could even be down to your position and your attributes. If you always say to yourself, yo, I'm a slow player, I'm not a fast player, you will never be fast. It doesn't matter how much training you do, how much sprint training, how much work you do. If you don't try to tell yourself, yo, I'm a quick player, I'm fast, I'm a fast player, you're never going to end up, you know, being able to showcase your quickness on the pitch. Because let's say you were slow before and you still have that self-image of a slow player on the pitch, even though you've increased your pace, let's just say by like 10, let's just use FIFA logic. If you've increased your pace by 10 or even 15, you know, but when you get onto the pitch, if you still see yourself as a slow player, you're still gonna be afraid to, you know, take on your man on the outside. You're still gonna be afraid to, you know, dribble with the ball, push the ball forward, and really chase after it. Even though you could, and you could literally just burn that defender, but because in your mind you don't see yourself as that fast, that quick player, you're gonna really struggle. You can even be a fullback. Maybe as a fullback, because you don't see yourself as a fast player, you're very scared to, you know, going for a challenge. You're very passive. You're so scared of the winger's pace to the point where you're being so passive. However, if you see yourself as a quick player, you're like, yo, I can get tight to him, I can get aggressive to him, and even if he does get past me, I have the recovery pace to get back, to recover, to make that last ditch sliding tackle. You understand? So that's the important thing with self-image. How you see yourself literally just dictates everything. If you see yourself as a bad player, then you're always going to be a bad player, no matter how many times you train. If you see yourself as a good player, you're ultimately going to be a good player. You're going to play way better than the person who sees themselves as a bad player. It's all about self-image. It's all about your mentality. Because like I said with the pace example, you could be fast, but if you see yourself as a slow guy, you're never actually going to use that pace in an actual game, you understand? So obviously, it's all just mental. Things are just holding you back. We all know the term that, you know, 90% of the game is mental, 10% of the game is actually, you know, that's the technical work, that's the physical work, because it's mental, you know, you understand? Obviously, when we're talking about mental, we're talking about, you know, football IQ, football intelligence, you know, scanning, being aware of your surroundings, but it's also just the mentality of, you know, not being able to overcome nerves, being able to come back from adversity, you know, mental toughness, all these components, self-image as well, just all these components, that's really what, you know, makes you as a footballer. That's what they're talking about when they're talking about, you know, 90% mental. But with the self-image, it's a feedback loop, it's a two-way streak. In order to build up your self-image, first I'd say see yourself as the person. So if you want to see yourself as a professional footballer, yo, you have to see yourself as a professional footballer. So that's just step one though. But then step two, you have to start doing the actions of a professional footballer. This could be training for at least an hour every single day, you understand? Training for an hour every single day, you know, and then let's say you do that for 2 weeks. You get to the point where it's like, it's become a habit, you understand? It's become a habit, and it's almost like, you get up in the morning, maybe it's, or before school, after school, before uni, after uni, before or after work, whatever you have, it just ends up becoming a habit. And then guess what? Because it's such a habit, because you're always with you always have a ball at your feet, eventually you're gonna start seeing your self-image as, yo, I'm a footballer, I'm moving like a pro. And then obviously, because you're training, you're gonna get much better as well, you understand? You get much better, you start looking around, you're like, alright, cool, I'm taking leaps and bounds past this guy, past this guy, past this guy. I'm good enough to play at a high level, I'm good enough to play at this level. And then eventually other people are gonna realize, they're gonna take note, they're gonna be like, alright, cool, this guy's a baller, this guy's a good player. And then guess what? That's how the self-image is built, you know what I'm saying? That's how you start seeing yourself as a footballer, and that's how you're very unlikely to fall off. You're always going to do things that you're always going to do things that sort of relate to your self-image. So if you're a footballer, you're always going to do things that a footballer should do, and then avoid the things that a footballer shouldn't do. So it's a two-way street. First, see yourself as that person, then do those actions. And then because you're doing those actions, you're going to feel like a professional footballer. You feel like a professional footballer, you're gonna do you do those actions. You do those actions, you're gonna feel like a professional footballer. That's literally just the two-way feedback loop of self-image. You see yourself as the person, then you do the actions, and then it just becomes a rebounder. You see yourself, the self-image, actions, actions, self-image. Self-image equals the actions equals you seeing yourself, the self-image. You understand? That's literally what it is. That's how you stay disciplined. That's the easiest way I can explain, you know, staying disciplined, staying focused, because a lot of footballers struggle with this, especially when they don't have people around them. A lot of players struggle with, you know, staying consistent with individual training, especially. You understand? Individual training especially, they get bored, they find it boring. You know, it's all good when they have people with them, when they have a training partner with them, when they have their friends with them for, you know, to do some possession, to do small-sided games. However, a lot of players struggle with, you know, just that individual training session. Even when they're in the session, they get distracted, they're on their phone, they might try to put their headphones in to listen to music to try to help them, but it's still not really doing it for them. They'll go one day, maybe they'll go 3 days in a row, then a week later they still haven't done any individual training. They find it very monotonous, very boring. However, there are ways around that. Work on different aspects of your game every single day. Do position specific drills, and actually, you know, actually measure what you're doing. You understand? Measure your crossing ability, measure your shooting. So for example, with the shooting, do certain shooting drills and make sure you tally up how many goals you're scoring, how many shots are in the corner, or whatever metric you want to use to measure. Actually measure them, and then the next time you go out onto the pitch, try beat that. You know, just little things like that to make your training enjoyable. But I'll probably make a video on how to make your individual training even more enjoyable, because a lot of footballers struggle with this, struggle with that particular thing. However, that's the vid for today. That's the vid on self-image. Self-image is the key to being disciplined, the key to really staying on track to achieve your goals, achieve your objectives of becoming a professional footballer. Let me know if you enjoyed the vid. Let me know if you have any. Let me know about the vids that you want to see in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed the vid. I've been JT, and I'm out.